What is up, guys? How we doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Jedi In Exile. We are continuing our series today of Andor reviews, and episode 5.
Yeah.
Bit of a banger, bit of a slow one, but still a bit of a banger. So before we jump in, guys, remember, hit like, hit subscribe, all of that great stuff. Make sure you don't miss any of our content that's coming out. Brian, talk to me, mate.
Yeah, so episode 5's dropped, and to be honest, it's got me asking a few more questions. So, first of all, Blue Milk makes another appearance right at the start of the episode.
We are a big
So
fan of
we
blue
know
milk on this channel. That coloured dairy, we're all
absolutely.
about it.
So it's not just a Tatooine delicacy,
No.
or whatever the creature is that Luke starts milking. um, So yeah, I've got quite a few questions. So the episode, the first question I had, so the episode started off. We got the officer. I don't really know what rank he is, but I know he's an officer for the company. He got sacked, didn't he? So last episode he came back and he was like, "Mum," and his mum slapped him. Um, actually, just as a side note, is she the actress who plays Harry's next door neighbour in Order of the Phoenix,
I
Mrs.
couldn't.
Fig?
I couldn't tell you, mate. I
I'll
couldn't
throw it
tell
out
you.
there. Anyone in the comments? I've not
Let us
googled it
know.
yet,
Let
so
us know.
let us know, please do. But yeah, so there's an interesting that there's, and we've said this before in the previous, I think in episode 3 maybe of this. We feel like he's a big character. Like they could have just written him out right now, and that would be the end of it. But of course, the end of the last episode, he's looking at Andor's face spinning round. That's how the episode ends. So there was questions for me on what is the series going to hold for him. Yeah, I love the blue milk. That was like written in caps lock on my notes. Is the blue milk, but also, and this is probably my biggest question of all, is Mon Mothma's husband. So I want to know. He doesn't seem like a. I don't really know what their dynamic is. He doesn't really seem like a nice guy. He seems like he's happy with or he's okay with the Empire the way it is. He's got some quite high and mighty friends who, let's call them cronies, that they all seem to enjoy making money off people suffering. But I wonder, the big question I've got with him is, does he know about Mon Mothma's links to a spark of a rebellion?
I'm gonna go with no.
I would also suggest no. Because she makes the comment, obviously, he's like, oh, you set up another foundation. Because they clearly got a bit of money, whether that's come from him or her or whatever. So, oh, you've set up a foundation. Why didn't you tell me about it? Oh, I didn't think you'd be into it. Why not? Because it's charitable. So she obviously, has a bit of a jibe at him. So, yeah, I just wonder whether he knows about, the whole spark of the rebellion kind of thing.
I kind of
And
get
then
that.
we've got, oh, go on.
I kind of get the impression that he's this kind of stereotypical, like aristocratic character
Yeah,
where
like, I'm okay.
it's kind of not really that fussed about politics, doesn't really care who's running the show as long as it doesn't really impact him having a good time and having a decent life. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, we went back a bit more with Cassian's story, obviously for the episode where they're going to be staging this, stealing the the payroll at this garrison. It's really clever. We saw a little bit more of the lieutenant, or if you're from America, the lieutenant. We saw a bit more of him, how he manipulated to make sure that there's only essential staff
that was so. I
in
genuinely
the.
thought that
It
was
was
so clever.
Yeah, it was really, really clever. So I'm looking forward. I thought that this episode was going to be where we saw
The
the
actual
break in, the
heist, yeah.
breakout. Yeah, um, but it's not. So this episode was, to be fair, quite a slow one, but it was slow in different terms to how we talked about maybe episode 1, 2, and 3 being a bit slow. Obviously, episode 1, 2, and 3 was like
Building,
kind of world building.
yeah.
Episode 5 is I think, and I know we said this about episode 4. Episode 5 feels like this is setting up the rest of the series now
Yeah.
to be. It could be it could be quite fast paced.
Yeah.
I just want to make an honourable mention. I saw something on Twitter today. I can't remember who the account is. So again, I'm really sorry for not giving the person credit. But while Cassian's doing this heist, at the same time, Zeb and Ezra are trying to steal some fruit. Rebels season
Oh,
one
the
and
Meilu
Andor are
run.
set at
The
the
Meilu
same
run.
at the same time. So we've got one trying to steal the entire payroll. Is it the Senate payroll?
The
Trying
sector
to
pay. This the sector
sector
payroll, isn't it?
payroll,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So they're trying to steal the entire sector payroll, and then you've got others trying to steal a Meilu run. So I
Oh,
thought that was worth an honourable mention.
oh
But
no,
yeah,
no,
no,
no, for sure.
the episode was like I say, a little bit slow, but again, it just adds to a 12-part series.
I'm gonna say that this one for me, rather than world building or lore building, this felt like it was tension building. This
Mm,
was the. I'm gonna use the word calm. I'll come back to that slight caveat to that in a second. But this felt very much like the calm before the storm, and Cassian
mm,
kind of sums that up where he's like, "Oh, it's the day before, so anything you can do to kind of take your mind off it." And it was like all the infighting that they had between themselves, and all of that kind of stuff. The reason I caveat calm is because actually, like he was threatened. He almost had a bust up with somebody, so it wasn't calm, but in the grand scheme of things, that there wasn't tons going on. Um, it was cool to see Luthen back, even for that really kind of short. I'm going to call it a cameo because he wasn't
yeah,
really in
in
the
this
episode.
episode, yeah.
But also for how much they've put on this, because his assistant, I can't remember her name, but his assistant says, you know, it's the start of something, the proper
Mm,
start of something. And it was, I don't know if it was the first time, but it was the first time I clocked it properly that they all stood round and said, "For the rebellion."
yeah, yeah.
So the first time that word has actually been thrown out there as like we're part of
Yeah,
something bigger.
yeah.
Um,
And
so
I think this is all, it's interesting because this all, for me, the kind of story of these pockets of rebellions has come from Rebels. Because it was only when, we know through the story of Rebels that you've got Ahsoka, who obviously has the codename Fulcrum. She's the one, I think when she talks to Ezra, she said there's other pockets doing what you're doing. And she's talking obviously to Ezra about his little pocket. Um, and so this is where obviously we know that you've got Saul Guerrero who's been mentioned already in a few episodes. You've got the gang from Rebels. There's all these pockets that are then eventually brought together by Bail Organa. So this story, it's really strange, but this story has been set up by an animation. And we talk about Clone Wars quite a lot. We've done um, episodes on the Clone Wars as a whole, and Ahsoka, and we haven't really focused too much on Rebels, but it's actually a really important show in terms of the whole Star Wars universe because it kind of binds that period together, leading into the originals.
yeah, you see so much other stuff behind it.
Mm.
But I think that again
You see a
comes
bit more
down to this.
practicality of the Empire, like you see a bit more realism of the Empire, don't you?
Yeah, but that all comes down to this Filoni spiderweb that we always reference, right? Like
Yeah.
this grand plan. But I think kind of getting back to the episode, I'm I'm excited to see what happens. I thought it was really cool to kind of see that dynamic where they didn't really want Cassian, and it's so funny seeing him like Diego Luna take a bow for the acting when he's like, you don't even know how to fly a thing. You
Yeah.
don't know how to do anything. Like you were essentially
You're asking me, but you don't know. You need me to
that
answer.
was
You're not
that was
testing me.
that
You
was that
need
was
me to
genuinely
answer.
that was one of those. We know the answer, but we're just checking whether
Yeah.
you know the
Yeah.
answer. Uh, like questions, but
Yeah.
it was just one of those where um, the like it was hilarious to see because they've been planning it for months and they kick off that somebody's been brought in like last minute, but actually in his head he's going, these guys do not have a clue. Like they're making
Yeah.
out like they're these drilled
Yeah. Yeah.
soldiers, but they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really interesting kind of dynamic to see. But yeah, no, I'm excited to kind of to see where we go from this now, because obviously we are gonna have the heist, like you said, the guy who was from the security forces. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. One of the things that I thought was cool that somebody pointed out was that there's kind of a little bit of symbolism there in that he's definitely from like quite a, or what I have interpreted and many people online have interpreted as being like essentially the space council estate. Like that is his like that whole unit that he goes back to where his mum lives and everything is kind of like set up as like a, so he's not from money, like him working in that security thing was like,
Well, he's got some kind of connection, hasn't he? His Uncle Harlow.
yeah, well,
Um,
we'll see what
I
happens
got the
there, eh?
impression that his Uncle Harlow could have got him a job, but he wanted to kind of do it on his own, or maybe his Uncle Harlow got him the previous job. I don't really know. There's something there.
I get the impression that Uncle Harlow is not related and that Uncle Harlow is a nickname and that he is a bit of a fixer, gangster, potentially slightly unsavory character, and that's why he went the complete opposite way and went into kind of law enforcement.
Yeah,
And why he has kind of, because you can see when he's talking to his mum that he's got absolute disdain for whoever it is that they're talking about.
yeah.
So no, I thought good, slow for a different reason and slow in a positive way, much like I think I said about episode 4. Episode 4 was that little bit slower. We'd built up to the action in episode 3. So yeah, I mean, I think let's roll around to scores like we do every episode. I'll let you go first, mate. What are you giving this one?
Out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7.75.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought long and hard about that. I feel like it's definitely not an 8. 7.5. 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it an 8. I really enjoyed this. I thought we got insight into everything much more, and it kind of gave us that once you like everything maybe looks one way on top, but once you scratch beneath the surface a little bit, you see a little bit more. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Brave man.
That gives us a 7.75 as an average. Which is
Sure.
pretty solid. We've got to remember we're still just under halfway through the series. There's still a lot more to come. We're definitely building towards something. And this heist, obviously, if they had taken this a different way, this heist could have been what the whole series was about, and they've not. This is essentially, and it makes sense. There's 12 episodes. This is going to be like the mid-season finale, isn't it? The big thing that happens halfway through. So. I think there's a lot
This
more
is
to
obviously
come.
what they need, though, because they're planning to take this money because Mon Mothma can't move money as easily. So she obviously sets up these foundations. I'm assuming, from what I know of money laundering, that she's probably set up this foundation to then put money into, and the organizations that are going to benefit from the foundation are actually going to be like Rebellion. It's not going to be like Rebellion Limited, like,
Oh, I don't
or
know.
Alderaan Rebellion Limited.
I don't know.
But clearly the foundation, she's setting up these foundations, I would assume, to be able to funnel money somewhere, because she says it's becoming more difficult and more difficult. So she probably is on Senate committees that have control of money. She says, oh yeah, we've got a foundation, send it here. And it actually goes to support, all these guerrilla warfare. So I feel like they're taking this money so that they don't have to rely on Mon Mothma for that.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. That's where I think the story is going so far.
I'm with you. I feel like obviously we know that the rebellion isn't what we've seen of it in the original trilogy and in Rogue One. Like it hasn't built to that yet. So this is really
No, it's not a well-oiled machine anymore. Yet, is it?
no. And so this is definitely going to be massively helpful for them. And it's also Cassian's chance to prove himself, isn't it? At this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. No, interesting one. I think it'd be cool to see what happens over. Definitely the next episode, I would put my money on being an absolute banger of an episode, and then what happens with the rest of the season. But let us know in the comments down below, guys, what you thought of this episode and what you thought of the series so far. Whether you're excited to see what happens next, or whether or not you're a little bit bored with some of these slower episodes. It's always great to hear from you guys. Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, as I mentioned at the beginning. All of the support that we've been getting so far has been incredible. and any support you can continue to give is massively appreciated by the both of us. And other than that, guys, all that is left to say is we will see you all real soon in the next one.
May the force be with you all.